The ceremony. Beneath the stars. The night was cold. The sky above the valley was filled with stars. But there was no peace in the air. Torches burned in a wide circle around the stone platform. Strange symbols were painted on the rocks. A group of alien villagers stood in silence, wearing dark robes. They were waiting for the moment to begin the ceremony. In the middle of the platform, tied with ropes, was a young alien girl. Her skin was pale blue, glowing slightly under the moonlight. Her eyes were wide with fear. She was no more than 16 in human years. She was barefoot. Her small hands were shaking. She tried to scream, but the cloth tied over her mouth stopped the sound. Her name was Lyra. 2 tall aliens stood beside her. They were elders, leaders of the tribe. Their eyes showed no mercy. "This is the will of the stars," one said. "The gods demand a sacrifice." The others nodded. None of them looked at Lyra's face. A deep drum began to beat. Boom, boom, boom. The sound echoed through the alley. Wind blew the torches, but they stayed lit. The villagers began to chant in their old language. It was slow, heavy, and dark. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She shook her head again and again. No one came to help. Far away, across the rocks and hills, a human man walked alone. His name was John Cale. He was a wanderer, a mechanic looking for old machines to repair and trade. He had a backpack, a flashlight, and a small energy gun. Nothing more. John had no idea what was happening in the valley. But suddenly, he stopped walking. He felt something strange in the air, like a whisper in the wind. A soft cry, almost too quiet to hear. He turned around. "Hello?" he called. Out. Nothing. He waited, listening. Then he heard it again. A girl's voice, weak and broken. It was not human, but it was full of fear. "Please, someone." The sound faded. John frowned. He checked his scanner. No sign of life nearby, but still he felt something was wrong. He changed direction. Back at the ceremony, the drumming stopped. The 2 elders raised their hands. The villagers knelt. The stone circle began to open. Lyra's body trembled. The ground under her was soft. Dirt. A hole had been dug. It was a grave. She cried louder, but the cloth in her mouth turned it into muffled sounds. The elders began to lower her into the hole. Slowly, slowly. The ground swallowed her legs, then her chest. Then her face disappeared under the soil. Only her glowing hands were left above the dirt. Then, the soil covered them too. The villagers dropped handfuls of stones over the grave and turned their backs. The ceremony was done. The gods were pleased. They walked away, leaving the valley empty and quiet. John reached the edge of the valley just before midnight. He looked down and saw strange lights. The stone circle was still glowing. Smoke floated in the air. The wind carried the scent of burnt herbs. He walked carefully down the slope, then he stopped. He saw it, a grave. Fresh dirt, stones scattered, and something else. Footprints. Many footprints leading away from the hole, but none going near it again. John moved closer. He knelt down beside the grave. His hand touched the soil. It was warm. Too warm. Then, he heard it again, a voice, so faint, so scared. "Help. Please." He froze. It was real. Someone was buried here. He looked around. No one was coming. The valley was empty. Without thinking, he threw down his backpack and began to dig, hands, fingers, nails, all pushing away the dirt as fast as he could. Minutes passed. His breath grew heavy. Then, his hand touched something, skin, cold, soft, shaking. He dug faster. A face appeared, covered in soil and sweat. Her eyes were closed, her lips dry. He tore off the cloth from her mouth. She gasped. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing like stars. She looked at him. Who are you?" she whispered. John didn't answer. He just pulled her out and wrapped her in his jacket. "You're safe now," he said. "I've got you." But deep in the shadows, behind the trees, someone was watching. The elders knew. The sacrifice had been disturbed, and the gods would not be pleased. A stranger in the shadows, the girl lay still wrapped in the human's jacket. Her skin was ice cold, her breaths were short and weak, but she was alive. John sat beside her in the dark valley, listening to the silence. The stars above them blinked like they were watching. The torches had all burned out. The stone circle behind him looked like it had never been touched. He had just dug a girl out of a grave. "Hang in there," John whispered. "You're going to be okay." She didn't speak again. Her eyes had closed. He touched her forehead, burning hot. She needed heat, shelter, water, and fast. John picked her up gently. She was so light, like she hadn't eaten in days. Her arms were covered in strange marks. Ritual symbols burned into her skin. One mark near her neck was still glowing faintly. He didn't know what it meant. He didn't care. All he knew was someone had buried her alive. And now, she was his responsibility. He walked through the rocks, away from the valley, carefully holding her close. His eyes stayed sharp. He had a bad feeling, and he was right. Far behind him, inside, the forest shadows, two figures stepped from the trees. The elders. They had returned to check the grave. They saw the dirt disturbed. The girl was gone. One of them touched the empty soil. His fingers came away glowing blue. "She's been touched," the elder said darkly. "By a human." "Then it is broken," the other replied. "The gods will be angry." "No," the first elder said. "Not if we fix it. Not if we find her again." They turned and faded into the shadows, silent as ghosts. The hunt had begun. John found a small cave an hour from the valley. It was dry and half hidden, behind boulders. He laid the girl on his sleeping mat and started a small fire. The warmth filled the space. He opened a water bottle and touched it to her lips. "Come on, just a little," he said. Her lips twitched. She took a small sip, then coughed. John smiled. "That's it. You're stronger than they thought." He looked at her face. She had soft features like a child, but her eyes, when they had opened, held deep pain. Her body was thin, bruised, and carved by the ritual. He sat back and stared at the flames. "What were they doing to you?" he muttered. Suddenly she spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why did you—" "Stop it." John looked at her. Her eyes were open again, shining in the firelight. "You were buried alive," he said. "What kind of man would walk away from that?" She blinked slowly. "They said I had to die, or the stars would fall." He frowned. "That's not how the stars work." She gave the faintest smile. "You are not one of them." "No," he said, shaking his head. "I'm just a mechanic, passing through." "Then you should go." "They'll come. They always come." "Let them," John said. "They'll find I'm not easy to scare." She stared at him for a moment. Then her eyes closed again. Outside the cave, the wind changed direction, and something else moved. Quiet, crawling, watching. Not all the villagers had left. One small scout, eyes glowing red, crouched near the rocks. It had followed the trail. It saw the firelight. It turned and vanished into the darkness. The elders would know where to go next. In the cave, John sat with his energy gun beside him. The fire crackled softly. The girl was asleep now. Her breathing was deeper. But John couldn't sleep. Not after what he had seen. He had explored abandoned stations. He had repaired broken ships in pirate zones. He had seen war, pain, suffering, but never this. He had never found a girl buried like trash under dirt, by her own people. He looked at her again. What had she done to deserve this? Or was it not punishment? Was it something else? A ritual, a sacrifice? He had questions, and he was going to get answers. Suddenly, a soft sound outside. John grabbed his gun and stood up, back to the wall. He listened. Wind? No. A footstep. Another. He stepped out silent. And there, just for a second, he saw it. A shape. A figure with glowing eyes. Tall, robed, watching the cave from far away. John raised the gun. "Hey!" But the figure disappeared into the dark. He waited. Nothing. After a long pause, he returned inside and sealed the entrance with a metal panel from his pack. He checked the girl again. She hadn't moved, but her hand had curled slightly into a fist, and on her wrist the glowing mark was brighter than before. John didn't know it yet, but that mark was waking up. Digging through the curse, the mark on her wrist glowed brighter with every passing hour. John stared at it from across the cave. It pulsed, like a heartbeat. Faint blue light lit the girl's skin in waves. It wasn't just strange. It felt wrong. The warmth from the fire didn't match the cold crawling in his spine. He had seen alien tech before, implants, trackers, even cursed artifacts. But this was alive. He knelt beside her. "Lyra," he said softly, remembering the name she mumbled in her sleep. "What did they do to you?" Suddenly the glowing mark sparked, and she screamed, her whole body arched in pain. Her eyes shot open, fully white, no pupils. The fire flickered violently. A gust of air slammed into the cave walls, though there was no wind outside. John jumped back. Her scream was not normal. It sounded like hundreds of voices, twisted together, crying out through her throat. Then she went still. The mark dimmed. Her chest rose and fell again. Normal. She was back. John stood frozen, holding his energy gun, heart racing. What just happened? Miles away, deep inside a mountain temple, the elders felt it too. The stones beneath their feet cracked. One elder dropped to his knees, gripping his chest. "It's awake," he gasped. "She's waking it." "The human has ruined the balance," another hissed. "He must be destroyed. The girl must be returned to the ground." "But it's too late," said the third. "The curse is broken, and now it will dig itself free." Back in the cave, John gently placed his jacket over Lyra again. Her body had cooled and her face looked peaceful, almost too peaceful. He stood and paced. He didn't understand any of this. She was buried, alive. That should have killed her, but instead, he looked at the glowing wrist. It woke something. He sat on a rock and turned on his old datapad. His fingers typed quickly. He searched ancient rites, alien tribes, regional myths. After an hour, one image caught his eye. Symbol, the same one on Lyra's wrist. He tapped the screen to read. The sigil of Dagora, a forgotten god, worshipped in the outer systems, said to sleep under the ground, fed by the fear of the living. Every generation, one soul would be chosen, buried alive, to keep Dagora silent, to keep the earth still. If the ritual failed, the god would awaken through the host. John dropped the datapad. Host? He turned to Lyra. She wasn't just a victim. She was the key. Outside, the sky grew darker. The red-eyed scout returned to the edge of the cave. This time, it wasn't alone. 3 more shadowy villagers joined it, armed, silent. One pointed to the cave entrance. Another lifted a curved blade. They moved forward, but something stopped them. The earth shook. A low rumble echoed beneath their feet. One of the villagers panicked and turned to run. The ground opened beneath him. A black vine, twisted and sharp, shot out and dragged him down into the dirt. The others froze, then ran. The scout stayed behind, watching and smiling. John jolted as the cave floor rumbled. Dust fell from the roof. Stones rolled away from the walls. Lyra's body lifted slightly off the ground, her eyes opened, but this time she was awake and aware. She looked at John. Calm. Focused. I remember now, she said. Remember what? They buried me. Not to kill me, but to feed. But it chose me instead. What is it? The thing beneath, it wants out. It used me as its voice. But when you pulled me out, she paused. It didn't break the curse, it changed it. Now, I can feel it. I can control it. John stared at her. You control it? She sat up slowly. Her movements were stronger. I can feel everything under us. The roots, the bones, the stones, I can make them move. John shook his head. That's not normal. I'm not normal anymore, she whispered. Suddenly the cave wall exploded inward. A spear shot through the air, barely missing John. 3 robed villagers stormed in with blades, shouting in their strange language. John fired his energy gun. One fell, the others charged. Before they reached him, Lyra stood, barefoot, dirty, and glowing. She raised her hand. The ground opened under the attackers' feet. Sharp black roots burst upward and wrapped around their bodies like snakes. They screamed, but it was too late. The roots pulled them into the ground. Gone. Silence returned. John lowered his gun. Okay. What the hell are you? Lyra looked at her glowing wrist. I think I'm something they were trying to bury forever. The girl who should have died, Lyra, stood in the center of the ruined cave. Barefoot. Dirt on her skin. Blood on her lip. But her eyes, bright and burning, looked like she had never died at all. John stared at her, breathing hard. I saw you buried. I saw you choking in the dirt. You were half dead. Lyra turned to him slowly. I was dead. Or close to it. Something inside the earth kept me alive. It watched me. It waited. John gripped his energy gun tighter. You're not possessed, are you? No, she said. But it's inside me now. The power is mine. It obeys. Me, she opened her palm. The ground at her feet responded. Dust swirling, pebbles rising into the air like feathers. John took a slow step back. This girl, who had once begged for life in a grave, now stood like a storm waiting to happen. Far from the cave, the elders sat inside their sacred chamber. The fire between them had turned black. The roots obey her now, one said, voice dry with fear. She carries the will of Dagora, another whispered, but twisted, controlled. She must not leave this planet, the third elder hissed. If she does, this curse will spread. Then send the executioners. All of them. They'll die. Then let them die. She must return to the earth, forever. Back in the cave, Lyra touched the side of her head. She winced. John stepped forward. What's wrong? I hear it calling, she said. Like thunder deep below. It wants me to go back. To the grave? He asked. No, farther, deeper. There's something still hidden under this land, something buried for ages, something huge. John blinked. You mean that thing you were meant to feed? She nodded. It's still down there, still hungry, but I think it's afraid now. Because I'm not what they expected. John led her outside. The sky was pale orange now, sunrise. But the land looked gray, lifeless. Trees twisted. The air smelled strange. Lyra stared at the horizon like she was seeing it for the first time. John watched her carefully. You're not the same girl I pulled out of that grave. No, she agreed. But I remember who she was. Scared. Cold. Forgotten. I'll never let that happen again. Suddenly she turned sharply. Her eyes narrowed. They're coming. Who? She pointed toward the hills. In the distance, a dark line moved, shadows marching, dozens armed with blades, chains, and glowing staffs. They're not coming to save me, Lyra whispered. They're coming to bury me again. John pulled out a scanner from his bag. Too many heat signatures. The valley was surrounded. He turned to Lyra. We can't fight them all. I don't want to fight, she said quietly. But I won't. Go back in the ground. Then we run. She looked down at the earth. No. We hide. Let me try something. She knelt on the dirt, placed her hands on the soil. The ground trembled, gently. John felt the air shift. Then, the earth opened, beneath them slowly like a mouth, revealing a staircase of roots and stone. A tunnel, she said. I made it. Come. John stared for a moment. I'm going underground again with the girl who was once buried alive. She smiled weakly. You're brave. Or stupid. He followed her down. Above them, the attackers reached the cave. But it was empty. One scout knelt, sniffed the air, touched the soil. They went underground, he said. The leader raised his staff. Collapse the path. The scouts began to chant, but the ground beneath them cracked open. Dark vines lashed out, snapping ankles, pulling one scout screaming into the dirt. The rest backed away, eyes wide. She's not running, one whispered. She's watching. Deep inside the earth, the tunnel glowed faintly from Lyra's skin. The walls pulsed with strange veins. Alive, ancient. John walked close behind her. Where does this lead? I don't know, she said. But I feel something pulling me. Something old. John looked at her again. A helpless girl was buried alive. Now, she was leading a human through a living tunnel, deeper into cursed ground. Fearless. Lyra, he said. What are you really? She turned to him slowly. I'm what they feared I would become. Hunted by her own people. The tunnel beneath the earth grew darker with each step. The air was thick. It smelled of dust, age, and something John couldn't name. Something old, like forgotten bones. Lyra walked ahead, glowing faintly. The light came not from her clothes but from the symbols on her skin, her wrist, neck, even her back, lit softly like stars under her skin. John followed, quiet but alert. His energy gun was gripped tight. Every sound made him look over his shoulder. We're being followed, he finally said. Lyra nodded. Yes, I can feel them above us, digging, sniffing. John frowned. They're tracking you? No, she replied calmly. They're tracking fear, and I stopped being afraid. Above the tunnel, the hills were crawling with hunters. Dozens of robed warriors, priests, and scout beasts swept the land. Their orders were clear. Bring the girl back, dead or alive. She is not a child anymore, said the High Seeker. She carries the mark of the cursed god. That human has corrupted her. They must both be buried. This time, forever. The group moved fast. They had tools, traps, and something worse, a soul net. It glowed green and hissed when it touched. The ground. Once we catch her, whispered one of the priests, we rip the god out, even if it kills her. They smiled at the thought. Deep below, Lyra stopped walking. The tunnel had reached a fork. One path curved upward toward the surface. The other sloped sharply down into darkness so black even her glow couldn't reach. John stepped beside her. Which way? She didn't answer. Her eyes were closed. I feel something, she said. It's not words, it's a pulse like a drum. Is it calling you? John asked. No, she whispered. It's warning me. John stiffened. What does that mean? She opened her eyes. They're close. Suddenly, the ceiling above exploded. Rocks fell. Dust filled the air. John pulled Lyra back just as 3 cloaked figures dropped into the tunnel, blades drawn, eyes glowing red. No more running, cursed girl, one hissed. John fired without warning. The energy bolt struck one in the chest. He fell screaming. The other 2 charged. Lyra raised her hands and the tunnel responded. The ground split. Roots snapped upward and slammed the attackers into the walls. The tunnel groaned from the force. John coughed through the dust. Remind me never to stand in front of you when you're mad. Lyra didn't smile. They'll keep coming, she said. And next time, they'll send the bone caller. John raised an eyebrow. The what? She looked at him. He controls the dead, and he only comes when they're truly afraid. Outside the tunnel in a stone campfire circle, the bone caller stood still as stone. He wore no mask. His face was dry, cracked and pale, like something that had not breathed air in years. He didn't speak. Instead, he placed a small, burned skull in the fire and whispered. The skull twitched. Then the dirt around the fire moved. Bones rose, dozens, forming, shapes, limbs, warriors, dead things, all now under his command. They go too deep, the bone caller muttered. Time to bring them back. In the tunnel, John and Lyra ran again. Lyra looked tired. Each time she used her power, she lost something. Energy, warmth, maybe even part of herself. John saw it in her face. You need to rest. No time, she said. I can feel them climbing through the walls. John pulled a flare from his belt. Then let's slow them down. He tossed it behind them. The blast shook the tunnel, causing a cave-in, but Lyra dropped to her knees. Something's wrong. What now? She touched the ground, trembling. They're here. John looked back. Through the dust came the dead, skeletons of warriors, eyes glowing green, weapons made of bone and rock. And leading them, taller than all, was the bone caller. John raised his gun again. So that's him? Lyra didn't speak. She stepped forward. Lyra, wait. She raised both hands. The tunnel roared, roots exploded from the walls, stones flew. The ground bent upward like a wave. The dead army slowed, but did not stop. They don't feel pain, Lyra said. I can't stop them all. John stepped beside her. Then let's do it together. The fight began. Blasts, roots, bones crashing. John fought like a soldier. Lyra fought like the earth itself. Together, they survived. Barely. At the end, Lyra fell to her knees, shaking. John caught her before she hit the ground. Hey, don't give up on me. She looked up, weak but still burning. I won't, she said. But I need you now. He nodded. And for the first time, the alien girl, once helpless and buried, held on to someone, not for fear, but for strength. The truth beneath her skin. The battle was over. For now. Lyra lay against the tunnel wall, her skin pale, her glow fading. The ground around her was cracked and smoking. The roots she had once controlled now hung limp and lifeless. John stood nearby, burned and bruised, watching her chest rise and fall. You pushed too far, he said softly. You nearly burned yourself out. I had to, she whispered. They would have taken me, used me again. She tried to sit up but gasped. Pain shot through her spine. John rushed to her side and steadied her. You need to rest, no more running. Lyra looked at him with tired eyes. We can't stop now, not until we reach the truth. Not until you know what I am. John hesitated. I know what you are. She shook her head. No, John. You only know what you see. The tunnel curved downward again, winding like a spiral staircase made of stone and root. As they walked slowly, Lyra told him the truth. I was born in the lower villages, she began. No one knew my parents. They said I was chosen, marked by the stars. But that mark wasn't a blessing. It was a curse. John listened quietly. They raised me for one purpose. To feed the god that sleeps beneath this world, Dagora, the hunger below. They raised you, just to bury you? John asked, shocked. Yes, Lyra said. They kept me clean, silent, and locked away. No friends, no son. They said I was lucky. They said my death would save the planet. John clenched his fists. They lied to you. She nodded. They did worse than that. They filled me with symbols, burned into my skin. They made me believe that my voice was dangerous, that even speaking would wake the god too soon. John looked at her glowing wrists and neck. And did it? Lyra looked down at her hands. Yes, she said, but not the way they thought. They reached a hidden chamber, large, circular, and covered in ancient markings. The walls pulsed faintly like veins. In the center stood a mirror-like stone. It wasn't made of glass, but it reflected everything. Except Lyra. She stepped in front of it and placed her hand on the surface. John watched in silence. Her glow returned, this time golden, not blue. And then, her skin began to change. The symbols on her body lit up like stars in a night sky. Not just on her wrists, but across her arms, shoulders, back, all the way to her face. She wasn't just marked. She was the key. John took a step forward. Lyra, what are you? Her eyes met his. I'm the lock they buried. I'm the voice Dagora left behind. And now, I'm the only thing keeping it asleep. Suddenly, the chamber trembled. The stone mirror cracked. The ground moaned. Lyra fell to her knees. It knows we're here. From the walls, shadows twisted. A deep sound like breathing echoed across the chamber. John pointed his gun. Tell me what to shoot. You can't shoot it, Lyra shouted. It's not a thing. It's a hunger, a feeling. It needs me broken. If I give in, it rises. The breathing grew louder. Lyra closed her eyes. John moved beside her. Don't give in. I can't stop it alone. Then don't. I'm here. He grabbed her hand, and suddenly, the chamber went still. Lyra opened her eyes. She looked at their joined hands. I don't understand. Why did it stop? Maybe, John said, smiling gently. Because for the first time, you're not alone. Maybe that's what it was always afraid of. Tears welled in Lyra's eyes. No one's ever touched me like this. Not since I was born. They treated me like a weapon, a ticking bomb. John tightened his grip. Then let's defuse it together. But just as hope returned to her face, a voice filled the chamber. Cold, sharp, familiar. You cannot escape your fate. From the dark tunnel, the High Seeker entered, followed by guards in silver armor. He raised a hand, and all the symbols on Lyra's body flickered in pain. She screamed. John aimed his weapon. The Seeker smiled. You think a human can protect her? She belongs to the earth, to Dagora, and we will finish what was started. The chamber erupted into chaos, energy blasts, stones falling, roots thrashing, and Lyra in the center, fighting not just her captors, but the monster trying to wake inside her. He stood between her and the world. The chamber cracked under pressure. The walls pulsed like a beating heart. The air was thick, choking, alive. The mirror stone had shattered into glowing shards. The sound of the ancient god's hunger filled the room like a whisper in every ear, and Lyra, barely standing, was glowing too bright to look at. She screamed, not in fear, but in defiance. Her skin burned with golden light. The markings across her body pulsed like stars ready to burst. John stood in front of her, weapon drawn, face cut and bruised, eyes locked on the High Seeker. You're not taking her, he growled. The Seeker raised his staff. She does not belong to you. She belongs to the god. She was born to be the vessel. No, John said. She was born to live, to choose her own path, and you're not burying her again. The Seeker's eyes glowed red. His guard stepped forward. John didn't flinch. He fired. Energy blasts tore across the chamber. Lyra dropped to one knee. The god inside her roared. The ceiling cracked, rocks fell. Roots snapped from the walls and lashed at everything around her, friend and foe. The Seeker laughed. She's losing control. No, John shouted over the noise. She's fighting. He turned to her. Lyra, look at me. Her eyes opened, wild, glowing white. Focus on me, just me. Everything slowed for her. The storm inside, the hunger, the fire, all paused when she looked at John. One human, one hand stretched out, one voice that never left her side. She reached back. The roots froze. The light dimmed. The ground steadied. The hunger inside her only stopped pushing because for the first time it was afraid. John pulled her close. "You're in control now, not them, not it, you." Tears slipped down Lyra's cheeks. "I don't want to be a god," she whispered. "I just want to be free." "Then be free." The Seeker stepped forward again, raising his staff. "You, fool, she is a weapon. If you don't destroy her, she'll destroy everything." John raised his gun again. "Then let the universe take that chance. But you're not touching her." Lyra stood, straight, proud, glowing softly. She walked past John and faced the Seeker. "No more sacrifices," she said. "No more chains." She raised her hand. The ground beneath the Seeker cracked. Vines shot up, not fast, not violent, but gentle. They wrapped around him like arms and slowly pulled him into the earth. He screamed, not in pain, but in disbelief. He wasn't dying. He was being erased. The god had made its choice, and it had chosen her. Silence returned. The chamber calmed. The glow faded from Lyra's skin. She fell into John's arms. Above, the sky had changed. Where once clouds of ash circled, the planet, now light broke through. The land, once twisted, was breathing again. Villagers came out of hiding, confused and frightened, but they saw her, alive, walking, smiling, not cursed, free. John helped her into the light. "You okay?" She nodded. "Tired, but for the first time I feel like I'm mine." He smiled. "Good. Now, what do you want to do?" Lyra looked up at the stars. "See what's out there?" John raised a brow. "Out there?" She grinned. "You've got a ship, don't you?" "Barely." He laughed. She took his hand. "Then we fix it and go anywhere." He looked at her, this girl who had been buried alive by her people, hunted by priests, touched by a god, and now stood brighter than anyone he'd ever known. "Wherever you want to go," he said. "We'll go together." And so, the girl they buried to silence the stars took to the stars instead, hand in hand with the one who refused to let her die. She had been a sacrifice. She became a storm. Now, she was a survivor, a symbol, a name that would one day be spoken across galaxies. Lyra of the Deep, the girl who rose from the grave because one human refused to walk away.